My dear friends, most of us don't even realize that we have been and are being psychologically manipulated. And this manipulation, it's a very negative kind. The manipulator wants you to fail. It makes you get bored quickly, lose motivation fast, give up too soon, and sooner or later you'll end up disappointed. It does everything it can to drag your life downward, and any success you dream about is nothing more than an illusion. And you may be asking, who is that manipulator? Well, my friends, that manipulator is you. Of course, I'm just kidding. That's what others might say, but I'm not saying that here. In this episode, you're innocent, so pay attention to this part. Very likely someone else has had a very negative influence on your life. And who is that person? Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode, one with a rather serious title. Someone is manipulating your mind. So, who is this manipulator that you can't even recognize? My friends, this someone is very close to you. And in the language of psychology, this manipulator has a name. Your brain. In just a moment, I'll explain this in more detail. I guarantee that after listening, you'll understand everything. All the secrets that you may have never known before. There's one very important piece of information I want to share with you. Back in 1924, the physiologist Oswald Hill argued that fatigue, when we train or practice something, doesn't come from actual muscle exhaustion. Instead, it comes from the influence of something very close to you, your brain. In other words, your brain is what makes you want to quit during training. Physically, your muscles aren't tired yet. In fact, they're still strong. But because of the deep relationship you have with your brain, you feel like you want to give up. And this psychological manipulator prevents you from training effectively and getting the results you want. Later, this line of research was expanded by a professor, a distinguished scientist from the University of Cape Town, specializing in exercise science and sports medicine. He conducted studies with athletes under extreme conditions. And, in those intense, high-pressure environments, you'd expect the athletes to be completely exhausted, right? But this professor discovered something extraordinary. Even under such extreme conditions, the athletes' bodies, specifically their muscles, weren't actually exhausted. Their muscles were still fine. That so-called exhaustion was actually coming from the brain. So let me repeat this one more time. We are not truly tired. We are not truly at our limit. We still have energy left. But because of this subtle influence from the brain, we feel like quitting. And this is the reason most of us fail, isn't it? Honestly, many of you here, if you go out for a run just 10 minutes in, you already feel tired, discouraged, ready to stop. Or if you sit down to study after 5 minutes, you already feel bored, don't you? Look around you. There's someone under the name brain who's been influencing you. Now, let me help you identify the brain in your relationships. The one who secretly manipulates you, who enjoys seeing you fail and fall. You may need a slightly quiet place for this, maybe somewhere a little hidden. And here's a trick. You can put your hand on your forehead as if you're deep in thought about work or something. That way, you won't attract much attention while you're trying to identify this suspect. After all, touching your forehead and pretending to think is a good disguise, right? Okay, now let's meet this familiar friend called the brain. Let me explain this deeply. It's science. When you exercise, your brain senses that your heart rate is increasing. That's data. It collects that information. Your heartbeat goes up. Your energy consumption rises. And all of that triggers your brain to send signals for you to stop. And what is that signal? It's the feeling of fatigue. Even though your muscles still have plenty of strength left to continue, your brain tricks you with the illusion of exhaustion. Remember that. It's an illusion. And again, let me put you back into the scenario I mentioned earlier. How many of you, after just 10 minutes of physical activity, already feel bored, ready to quit, already tired? Why? Because the brain always wants to conserve energy. Whenever a task requires more effort, more focus, more control, the brain wants to protect energy reserves, so it sends signals of fatigue, boredom, telling you to stop. That's why sometimes when you sit down to focus on a tough task, maybe reading a book, you suddenly feel sleepy or uninterested. That's likely your brain activating its stop signal. So, to sum it up, whether it's physical exercise or mental effort, the brain plays its tricks. It manipulates you into quitting. And from here, we have a very clear mission. If we want success, both physically and mentally, we must overcome the manipulation of our brain. But how? Well, that's the main content of the next part. Very likely, every failure, every limitation you've experienced has come from this manipulator, your brain. So, how do we deal with it? In fact, there are many therapeutic, long-term solutions. But of course, most of them are too difficult for the majority of people. That's why I want to share with you a few solutions that are truly simple, truly easy, and completely free of side effects. This is very important because only then can you persist and practice them. Even if you listen to this episode just once, you'll walk away with practical ways to handle it. So, what's the very first method? This one almost feels like you're doing nothing at all, but in reality, you are doing something. In fact, you're doing a lot. It's like doing nothing, but actually doing everything. What does that mean? Step 1. Simply recognize the presence of the manipulator in your mind, your brain. When you exercise, when you study, those feelings of wanting to quit will definitely come up, and you need to know why you feel that way. I've just explained that to you earlier, please. Don't believe in that very first wave of fatigue. Because that feeling, it's created by the manipulator in your brain, that's all. If you don't understand this mechanism, you'll mistake it for real tiredness, even when you've only been walking for 10 minutes or when you've just sat down to work for a few seconds. Honestly, so many people here believe they simply can't read, right? And then you invent all sorts of mystical explanations. Like, oh, my brain works in images, not in words. Or, I'm more of an auditory learner, not a reading type. But let me tell you the truth. If I ask you to sit and watch a lecture video with focus, you'll still get sleepy. If I ask you to listen to an audiobook with deep concentration, you'll still feel bored. So what's the explanation? When you read, you can't focus. When you watch a lecture, you can't focus. When you listen to audio, you can't focus either. Right? So we need to understand that these feelings in general come from the brain. And why? Because the brain wants to conserve energy. Whenever you do something difficult, the brain will give you those signals, making you feel bored at best or even physically tired. But don't believe those signals if you're just starting out. That's very important. Now, the second method to overcome your brain's manipulation. Build up your endurance gradually through two variables, intensity and time. What does that mean? Well, as I've explained, when you exercise, you quickly feel bored and tired. When you study, when you concentrate, when you think deeply, you also feel bored and tired. So what do? The best approach is to start small. Choose simple, easy physical exercises. Choose simple mental tasks, like basic reading, light data processing, or easy study sessions. Start light, then gradually increase the intensity, the difficulty, and the time. For example, walking. If you walk for 10 minutes and already feel bored, fine. Take 10 minutes as your starting point. Keep the intensity, the difficulty, very low, just a slow, easy walk. Keep the time short too, maybe only 5 to 7 minutes at first. Then, little by little, increase it. Walk a little faster. Go from 10 minutes to 15 minutes, then 15 to 20. Step by step, you'll eventually be able to jog. Eventually, you'll go 40 or 45 minutes or more. And your brain will adapt. It will learn to believe you actually can do those things. It won't resist anymore, and it won't keep sending you signals of boredom or fatigue. In other words, you're secretly retraining your brain, and your brain is smart. If you teach it properly, it will learn. That's the second method. Remember this well. Gradually increase your endurance by training your brain through improving both intensity and time, whether it's study, exercise, or work. And by the way, this applies to work too. Many of you, just hearing the word training at work, already resist, right? But the solution is simple. Just increase gradually. First intensity, then time, And soon you'll become resilient and strong. Now, the third method to handle that quick boredom, or even sudden fatigue when you're doing deep thinking or mental work. Use stimulation from sound, what we can call sound therapy. Specifically, something called binaural beats. These sounds are usually set at frequencies between 14 to 30 hertz. When you listen to them, they can help you focus better, improve attention, solve problems more effectively, and even boost memory. And yes, this comes from research. I've put the source on the screen. It's very simple. When you're working or studying, just put on your headphones, go to YouTube, and search for binaural beat 14 hertz or 30 hertz. As long as it's between 14 and 30, it's fine. Listen for 1 to 2 minutes as a kind of warm-up, then get into your work. Gradually, these frequencies will actually influence your physiology. At another frequency, around 40 hertz, scientists have also shown that it helps improve learning and training efficiency. So, when you're in the process of studying or training, 40 hertz can be very useful too. And again, it's simple. Just search for binaural beat 40 hertz on YouTube or even on music apps and you'll find it. But here's something I really want you to pay attention to. Some people are sensitive to sound. So even though this is wonderful and helpful for most people, it doesn't mean it works for everyone, right? Just like seafood. Delicious, but some people are allergic. It's the same with binaural beats. Some people just can't handle them. So you need to observe your body. Try listening. If it feels fine, good, comfortable, keep going. If not, don't force it. And if, in case you listen and feel it doesn't really fit you, maybe you even notice some side effects here and there, then it could be that you're just quite sensitive to sound. If that's the case, just skip it. Don't listen. I mean it. Because I'm giving you many different ways, not just this one way. So that's my little note for you when using sound therapy. Of course, you might be wondering, hey, this is something used in studying, but what about physical training? Well, let's move to the next option. You ask, I've got it ready. This way is very effective, and it's based on my very personal experience. When it comes to training, how do we actually increase the effectiveness of our physical training? Because physical training also has a huge impact on our success. If you don't have health, you really can't do anything, right? So the question is, how can we train more? Of course, I'm not talking about overtraining. The truth is, the problem for most people isn't that they train too much. It's that they train too little. So how can we train just a little bit more? Push our endurance just a little bit more so we become healthier, right? Now, we still use sound when we train. Could be at the gym, could be running, could be walking. And it's totally fine if you listen to some upbeat, energetic music that gets you fired up, right? That's good. But that's not really the main thing I want to share in this part. The thing I discovered quite by accident but really useful is this: the unit of time I use for my training. I realized that if I set my training unit as minutes or number of reps, or if you're walking and you set a goal like 10,000 steps or 8,000 steps, that's okay. But it doesn't feel as inspiring or as effective as another kind of unit. And that unit is songs. Let me explain. Say you're walking and you've already gone for about 10 minutes. If you set a goal like, I need to walk 5 more minutes, you'll probably feel bored and maybe even want to quit. But what happens if you set your goal as, I'll walk for 1 more song? That's totally different, right? Chances are you'll actually do it. You just let 1 more song play in your headphones and walk until the song ends. Beautiful. That's such an effective way to increase both your intensity and your duration. Just like what I mentioned back in part 2, remember? Building endurance by gradually increasing 2 variables, intensity and duration. And what happens if you finish 1 more song and then tell yourself, okay, let's go for 1 more. And it's even better if it's one of your favorite songs, because now you're enjoying the music while also using the length of the song to stretch your workout time. That's the method I use. With this, I can easily add another 20 minutes, or even another half an hour, and it feels almost effortless. No inner struggle at all. And honestly, that discovery made me really happy, Because if I set it as, I need to walk 15 more minutes or work out 15 more minutes, my body naturally resists. But if I say to myself, hey, let's just do one more song, then everything feels so much easier. For me, this works amazingly well. This is the kind of lesson I figured out through my own experience, and now I'm sharing it with you. That's everything I've got for you in today's episode. Since the solutions are all grouped close together near the end, I won't be doing a recall section like I usually do. Hope you don't mind. But I did leave timestamps on the video. If you hover your mouse over the timeline, you'll see markers for Method 1, Method 2, Method 3, Method 4. That's also a great way to review this episode. Finally, I really hope that after this talk, you'll look at success, endurance, and your personal capacity in a whole new way. And I believe you'll definitely be able to handle that tricky little thing called the brain more easily and effectively. Wishing all of you success, happiness, good health, and may you achieve everything you truly want. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next episode.